riding down Highway 61. Sides of the roads all lined with fields, nothing but sunset in the windshield. Feel it as soon as I ride into town. This is where I go to slow down. Miles and miles of soybeans and corn. I'm in the place where the blues was born. About a mile from the big muddy river, place I'll always remember. Cabin on the lake and a fishing pole. Forever here I'll rest my soul. I can feel my worries drift away from being out in the sun all day. No matter where in the world I go, I'll always find home on the banks of that oxbow.
What's up, guys? Brad Chappell back with you at the Grizzly Jig Show 2024. Having a blast. It's been kind of a madhouse, hasn't it, Jerry?
It's been a good show.
It's
Real
been
good
awesome.
show.
Weather's been beautiful, and you kind of think, well, the weather's so pretty. Probably a lot of fishermen actually fishing, but a lot of these guys are waiting to fish until they come to Grizzly Jig Show and stock up and get ready for everything.
Yeah, in the last 2 years, we've had bad weather.
Yeah.
So it kept a lot of people from traveling, making that trip. I know just for us, we had to leave 2 days early
Right.
from Texas to get over here. And so we didn't have to worry about that, which is really good. And so it's been an awesome show. I mean, people buying product and seeing a lot of stuff and getting to talk to everybody. Been a lot of anglers here this year. We didn't have any
Yeah.
tournaments in the way where everybody
Made
was
it real
going.
nice.
So it's been a great show.
I'll let you do a little introduction, but probably everybody already knows Mr. Jerry here. But go ahead and introduce yourself
Jerry
anyway.
Hancock. I've been guiding since '99, and now I'm full time on Lake Fork in Texas. Fish a few tournaments. I don't fish tournaments like we used to. We fish the local Texas Trail, and we'll be at Wally's Expo again this year. We won it back in 2020, which was pretty awesome, and
Yeah.
we've got a lot of miles out of that.
Right.
But been around the sport a long time. I love to see all the new blood. I mean, I'm excited. Travis lived down at Lake Fork as well, and got to know Travis real well, and kind of got to be friends. My wife and his wife, we spend a lot of time going out to eat together, and he helps guide some trips with us. And what he's done on the tournament trail this last year, he's one of them sticks now.
He's one of the new sticks.
Yeah, and
I gotcha.
So I'm excited to get Travis up here. I've been around Travis a lot, fished around him a lot, so he's got a lot of knowledge, so it's going to be interesting for everybody to get introduced to Travis that don't know him.
Introduce yourself there, Travis. Let us know who you are.
So my name is Travis Decker. Lake Fork is my home lake, and I've been fishing pretty much my whole life. I didn't grow up really crappie fishing till probably the last 6 or 7 years. Shot a lot of docks. Didn't really, never was in the tournament scene, and finally just decided it was time to buy a live scope, and man, I wanted to expand into the tournament scene, and it kind of, I'm competitive, my competitive nature, and the drive to not get beat, and just to learn more, and
Got hooked.
I've tried to take, I have. That's what I've done. I've tried to take all of it and learn and do the best of my ability, and that's kind of, I help Jerry and these guys run trips. I run trips on my own, part-time,
Yeah.
but I tournament fish more than I guide, so.
Yeah. Well, I thought of this today, and I actually just met Travis last night, and I knew his name, but I really didn't know who he was, and nothing. It's just what it is with this industry. It's growing so fast; it's hard to keep up with everybody. But I kind of thought of Jerry and Travis. I've got, I hate to say OG. Maybe OG.
I guess I'm getting that way.
Yeah.
I feel that way.
I mean, we're
feel
OGs.
Yeah, we've been around,
Then we got the I guess we could call you a new G.
That sounds good to me.
But I asked them both, and I said, we get this question asked all the time from a lot of different people, and I think it's a really good subject line to really cover and have both of you guys' thought process, but it's breaking down new waters and trying to find fish in a impoundment of water, no matter the size. It's still basic concepts the same. But how do you go to these new bodies of water and catch fish? And I'm not talking, we're not going to really narrow it down to, wintertime or summer, but just the general thought process that you go in and say, all right, I know I've got to go fish. I'm going to say, what's that big lake in California that's so hot?
Clear Lake?
Clear Lake. You both guys have won a week trip to Clear Lake in California, and it's on my bucket list, I can be honest. I would be getting really excited. But I'm not taking you. I'm just saying, if we got to go over there for a week, how would your thought process start? Because I know you've never been there. To go to Clear Lake, California, for example.
So, obviously, and I always tell people this, I'm one of the newcomers in the industry. I tell people like Jerry and Paul that he fishes with, these guys are absolutely full of knowledge and breaking down these lakes. They had to work harder at it then than we do now.
Right.
So I believe that that's hurt me some, knowing, learning these lakes, because I don't have to learn them as good because LiveScope tells me what's there.
Right.
But for me, if I was going to a lake I don't know, which I've been to several this year because this was kind of my first year of really fishing a lot of national stuff. So pretty much all of these lakes that I go to, they're new for me.
Right.
But obviously it depends on, am I fishing for blackfish? Am I fishing for whitefish? That's going to, I need to figure out what type of species am I fishing for. And, same as when I went to Cumberland this year. We knew Cumberland was a clear water lake. And I'm going to take what I know about blackfish, and I'm going to say, okay, well, obviously they're going to typically hold the structure. They're going to be balled up, docks, whatever. I need to know what I'm looking for on a map, I guess I would say. So my deal is I always take and open up a lake, and I'm going to start at one spectrum or the other. I'm going to start really shallow or really deep. I don't usually start in between. And obviously, I'm going to look at how the creek runs through or a river runs through the lake. I'm looking for, if I'm fishing shallow, I'm going to be looking for ditches. I'm going to be utilizing Google Earth as well.
I was going to ask you what you use, paper maps or Navionics?
So I have Navionics on my phone, and I use Google Earth on my computer. And, obviously you can scroll back like 15 years on Google Earth. And especially, I think that's it's a little more useful tool on the shallow water lakes, the Google Earth tool.
Right.
But I'm still going to open it up because even like at Cumberland, that lake fluctuates so much. You can see these laydowns and stuff.
At certain levels.
When it's at certain levels on Google Earth, close to the banks. So Cumberland is a deep lake, but it can also fluctuate, I think, 50, 60, 70 feet.
Wow.
So there's a lot, when it's down 70 feet, you can see a lot of exposed structure on the banks.
All right, you go through Google Earth and you see a couple laydowns. Will you mark it? You go out to your unit at that point, mark it, or you just kind of have it as a visual reference? This is somewhere I need to go check.
No. There's programs that you can run that will that you can download the actual
waypoint,
latitude and longitude, and download that and then put it into your graph.
Nice.
So you can take, no different than a shallow water lake. If you're wanting to run a ditch or something, you can take and mark that whole ditch and run it in your graph just so you can stay in that ditch.
What's the name of that program?
I cannot remember.
Oh, yeah.
I don't right offhand. But there is several programs.
We'll find out. How about that?
So that's kind of what I use for me when I'm breaking down a lake. I'm going to start on shallow or I'm going to start on deep. I'm going to start on whatever I feel like is going to be my best. Mm-hmm. But I don't typically start in the middle. I'm going to, if I don't find them deep, I'm on one end of the lake, I'm going to go to the other end of the lake. And then I'm just going to start working back or doing, I'm just going to start chopping it in half.
Jerry, you got a lot of experience in this too now.
Yeah, but
a whole lot.
Now this is, these guys are so advanced. I am not saying I have pulled up Google Earth, and I will, and look at a lake. But, I'm thinking back when we were traveling a lot, fishing tournaments, and we're going back, 15 to 20 years ago.
Yeah.
There was not all this stuff. It was paper maps. And
There's still paper maps.
there's still paper maps, and I've got boxes of them. And I'll still pull one out on Lake Fork at time to time and look at, because some of this new stuff doesn't have as much as some of them paper maps, or vice versa, But I remember, we'd go to a lake, and let's say we're going in April somewhere, and I would know what my home lake was doing. The fish were on the banks, let's say, at my home lake, Ray Roberts or Levon. Well, if we go to Eufaula, which is a couple hundred miles north, those fish are going to be a little behind to what your fish should be.
Right.
And I mean, this sounds pretty, simple, but, we'd pull up to a local bait shop, get to Eufaula, hey, let's run in and buy a pound of minnows. And you see a couple old guys sitting out there loading, they're coming out with a bag of minnows, and you walk up and go, man, they biting? Oh, man, they're catching them right off the bank. Well, they're on the bank. Well, now we know the fish are on the bank. That gives us a start point. Or, no, man, they just hadn't started yet. Well, they hadn't pulled up yet. So that would just right there would give us just immediately, we'd know. But, one of the rule of thumbs, we're timber guys. We typically like to jig
I've heard
timber,
that before. I think I've heard that
for
about
years
you.
and years and years. This goes way back. And we like to used to be rule of thumb, and Live Scope's disproving some of this. But we used to try to get as far away from the dam as we could get and stay in deep enough water. That was just kind of the first thing we'd do. So we'd break a map out and look, and does it have timber? And we would find creek arms and creek bends, and as far away, and we'd look at the depth on the map. And when we got out there, sometimes they don't always add up, but typically your muddier water's going to be up coming in, especially in the springtime. And, and it kind of holds true on a lake like Fork that we fish every day. We know in the spring where this tournament's going to be won every year, pretty much.
Right.
And it's a long way from the dam. It's just muddier water. It just always seemed like there was bigger fish in that part of the lake. Now, that's a seasonal thing as well. Like you said earlier, you can't – springtime, what you're looking for, and July is two different things.
Yeah.
But if I go to a lake and I know in the spring we catch them in this area, and I go back in June, these fish will probably have moved out not far from there. They're going to be back south probably in a little deeper water, and it's now the advancement of all this. These young guys have learned to do and go back and honestly a little more advanced than what we used to have to do. We just had to do a lot more looking, and once you get to a lake, you'd have some ideas. You might have 4 or 5 spots like we want to go check. And then once you get there, it might pan out or it might not. Then you had to decide, well, I need to be deeper or shallower and start running from there. We didn't have the luxury of seeing these fish.
Yeah.
Like, there's lakes that you can go to. There's guys, their whole deal is drop the trolling motor, turn it on 10, and if I cover enough water, I'm going to run into enough fish. And that's absolutely can happen. I'm a little more, why are these fish here? And when these fish leave here, where are they going to go? Because that's how we used to have to do it.
Had a pattern, yeah.
And I still take a lot of pride in knowing when my fish leave where they're going. And I like to stay ahead of the fish, not behind them. Because if I'm ahead of the fish, I've got more fish coming to me every day. And I'm talking guiding a little more than tournament. But if I'm in an area and I know these fish are moving north in the spring, I've got more fish coming every day. But if I'm down in the deep water where they're leaving, I'm going to have less fish every day. Mm-hmm. You're behind them. So I try to stay ahead of them a little bit, and that way I just stay and fish longer,
I think a lot of it kind of goes back to is doing a little bit of homework, but also a little bit of legwork. There's fishermen in general, we like to brag, and we talked about in the seminar yesterday. You can go to the boat ramp, and usually you can kind of tell that's a guy that's really whacked them. One, he's not in a hurry to leave. If you've ever really watched people, if they've whacked the crappie, they're kind of hanging around and kind of just walking around with their chest poked out a little bit.
He's hoping somebody talks to him.
He's hoping somebody's asking him.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I've seen that so many times. I'm like, oh, yeah, I know that guy over there, and you can tell he caught him today. If they don't catch him, guess what they do?
Yeah, he's out of there.
They go home. They don't want nobody to talk to them.
Yep.
So you can even watch the behavior of fishermen almost and see how good the bite is out of the area.
Yep. Oh, you can walk up to a weigh-in line at the end of the day. You can look at people's faces. And you can
Absolutely.
tell if they have a good day or bad day.
Yeah.
You don't have to get,
Exactly, like Jerry says, you know, when you fish enough tournaments, you learn people's demeanor. So you can tell with certain people if they're loud, they ain't got them.
Yeah.
If they're real quiet, they've got them. That like this.
And the boat ramp's such a good example. And I remember a couple of years ago, and it was a tough bite, and like I was at, and 11 o'clock in the morning we pull up, and there's boats leaving at 11 o'clock, and I'm like, all right, either this is a really good sign or a really bad sign. And you can see when I kind of get out of the truck and walking towards them, and I'm talking about guiding, and you know, they were just almost dreading me to come over there, and you could see they were really wanting to leave real quick before I got to them, and I was like, oh, I already know what this is looking like. And we had a major cold front at the time, but I said, man, either this looks really good or really bad. And they was like, 8 boats, none of us caught a crappie today. And I was like, okay, that's what I thought, just by the feel of your actions there. But I kind of go back to the paper map thing. You can learn so much, just like these Navionics and Google's map, but do a little pre-homework almost. Do that little bit of a study aspect. And I actually won a tournament probably 10 years ago by just flat out picking a spot and never even pre-fishing it.
Yep.
And I pre-fished an area the day before and went back that night because the wind was going to switch directions and all those kind of good stuff, but picked out a spot I'd never been to before because it was real similar to what I pre-fished, but I couldn't fish what I pre-fished because of wind conditions. But I picked out the same spots on the other section where the wind was able to be fished. Went in there blind, and just by looking at saying, oh, that looks exactly the same over here. And we went over and did real well. But it kind of goes even back to what Jerry says. You know, if you're fishing, let's say in Lake Fork, and you're coming over to Lake of the Pines, you know, it's a new lake for you. You're going over there. Find out what your local fish are doing.
Yeah.
You can say, all
Every
right,
lake's gonna fish a little bit different.
they're going to fish a little
deeper. Fork fishes deeper than Pines.
right.
You know, we've learned that over the years. So
Looking for some kind of starting point to go fishing. And that's what both of these guys have just said to me in my mind is looking for a starting point to start fishing.
you know, having that, what Travis saying is, you know, he can throw that trolling motor down and take off. Let's say he goes and he just, man, you know, I don't know. But eventually he's going to run into them. Us having that experience from way back, you know, what I used to do, and I think it's still smart people to do, is me and Paul used to talk. We'd come in. If I catch fish in an area, I'd come in and go, why are those fish there?
Right.
And when I would break the map out, come back, I'm talking post-game, go back and look at it and say, man, that creek channel makes a bend right up against that point. And then I could go find 4 or 5 other spots.
Yeah.
But if you go to there and you don't catch them, it's harder to know why they're not there than it is to figure out why they are there. So use that, you know, and then you can go and start duplicating. Just like you said, you want a tournament, not even pre-fishing, but you could see on a map. And I can do the same thing. A lot of these guys, you know, can look at a map and pick out. If we broke, just didn't matter what lake, and you walked around this show and you said, hey, you're going in spring to this lake, and you asked everybody, where would you start? I'd say the consensus, there would be 2 or 3 areas where everybody would kind of
Key in on.
And me and Kel was talking here a while back. It's funny. And Travis, he knows this. We fish our, you know, on our Texas trail. We all find the same fish, and we all have a different way of finding these fish. But the good anglers tend to find the same area of fish. They may go about it different ways, but they tend to all find the same fish, you know. And I see it happen time and time and time again.
Been doing it for 8 years.
Oh, for years. I mean, it's always been that way. So, you know, and I don't. It's a great subject, and I have people ask me all the time. Well, I mean, it's pretty basic, and you have it all the time. Hey, Brad, I'm coming down to Ross Barnett in March, man. What should I do?
Yeah.
Which, well, there's a lot of what ifs too. You know, what's the weather doing? What's the wind doing?
What's the best month?
Yeah. What's the best month? I mean, then say, well, it's not that simple. I wish it was, But we hear this. I mean, this is a question on everybody's mind. Heck, if I was going to a lake I've never been to, and I know Travis is fishing it, I'd call Travis and say, hey, man, you know, is that water muddy up there? Or is it clear? Is it blackfish or whitefish? I mean, like I said, looks like he said, the blackfish and whitefish deal, that's a big deal to know what you're fishing for.
Let's talk about that real quick. How do you go about a lake that you know that's known for white crappie compared to black crappie? I know, that's a good one.
Let's see. How do I go about a lake that's
Has
known?
white crappie compared to, you're going to look for white crappie more than you would black crappie.
First off, I'm going to look for the dirtiest water in the lake.
Yeah.
That's where I'm going to start. I'm going to pull up a map and I'm going to look at that water change. And typically that's going to be on the northern side of the lake or the shallow end of the lake, because I know white crappie thrive typically in dirtier water.
Right.
And it was, honestly, I'll go to Cumberland. I went to Cumberland with the mindset I wanted to catch white crappie. And I went up, I can't remember, Fishing Creek or something like that, got in the back of it, and all I caught was white crappie. But I never caught one over a pound. They were all small. Well, then I kind of started learning and breaking down, I was really busy before I went to that tournament. So I really did not do my due diligence prior to that tournament until we got there. And then, you know, started watching TV shows, started pulling up everything we could find on the TV, on the internet of Lake Cumberland, and you're seeing everybody's catching blackfish. You're like,
There's another.
maybe we're on the wrong fish. And especially when I was sticking fish left and right. I could have caught a pile of white crappie, but they weren't over a pound. Well, then just through my research, I found out that there was a pound and a quarter whitefish in that lake was really a big fish.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, I don't think that's going to do it. So then I completely refocused my attention on getting out of that dirty water, getting into that clear water, because I knew that's where your blackfish were going to be, and just kind of changed my tactic. And that's how it ended up working out.
Jerry?
Yeah, it's the same thing. You know, if I'm going to lake and we're going to try to find out what should we be fishing for, and if it's blackfish, first of all, I'm going to be very disappointed because honestly, I hate them. I despise them. Now, there's nothing prettier than a big old black crappie. Nothing fights harder. Not saying I don't enjoy catching them. I hate fishing for them.
Right.
My style. You know, I'm a vertical, timber, dirty water guy. That's not the black. So if I know we're after blackfish, I'm probably going to probably go, like I said, cleaner water. I'm going to maybe concentrate on docks, brush piles more than timber, lay downs, bridge columns. I mean, they love bridge columns. You know, so I'm probably going to downsize my bait.
Yeah.
I'm going to change my presentation to more of a pitching or casting presentation. Even the colors of my baits, I typically go darker with black crappie. I get in more of the browns or even blacks and stuff like that, color jigs instead of my white and chartreuse. I'm just going to have to approach it completely different. And from someone that is from a shallow, muddy water lakes like we've used to fishing, it's a big difference, you know. And like Travis said, you know, I remember we went to Table Rock and everything I seen on that lake, you know, it's deep, it's clear, it's all that. And, you know, I researched, and there's not a lot of history on that lake, especially in tournaments. It was a tough lake, you know. It's hard to find history. But nowadays, and that's another thing you can do, you can go back and look.
Google.
You can go back nowadays, even tournaments and stuff, you know, if you're a tournament angler or you're just a weekend angler, I understand it's two different things, but you can still see what people are weighing, the weights, what these lakes put out, and you kind of know what a big fish is in that lake and where to go from there. But, you know, if you're fishing for 2.5 pound fish in a lake that only grows them to 1.5 pounds,
good luck.
You're wasting your time.
Yeah.
You need to know from the tournament guys, first we got to figure out, first thing we do, we talk about what's a tournament fish. Man, about a 170. So now you know what class of fish you're looking for.
I even think on that same token, if you're a weekend guy and you're wanting to plan a trip or you have a family vacation, let's say like Hamilton. That's a good one there.
Don't go there. That's my first thing.
Oh, I feel the same with you now. I definitely love hate, but I would look at that lake and say, all right, we're going to plan to go vacation there. Yeah. You could look back on the tournament history side of the things or watch a little bit of the weigh and be like, all right, those guys are catching bigger black crappie. Yeah. I know at that point that I'm going to, like Travis just said, I'm going to concentrate on on piers and docks or whatever the mustache guy might
Yeah.
determine. But
Yeah.
and then say, all right, I need to look for brush piles.
Yeah.
I need to look for things that really fit the typical black crappie, and crappie can really throw your mind out of whack here and there. But I'm gonna look for structure if I go to Lake Hamilton.
Yep.
At this point, I know
Yep.
that the bigger fish in Lake Hamilton
Yep.
are going to be the black crappie.
Yep.
So I need to really concentrate on boat structure from piers and docks, possibly some bridge stuff, and then also brush piles. And you don't worry about the white crappie because everybody wants to catch the bigger fish.
Yeah. Another thing, when you history is good and history is bad, I run into all the time with these people. They'll pull up and they'll fish this set of trees, and it'll be in January and they're in 18 foot of water, and I'm like, man, the closest fish to you is probably about 2 or 3 miles from you. At this time of year. Oh no, man, me and my dad, we pulled up here about 10 years ago and tied up, and we just whacked them. We filled the boat up. And I said, well, what time of year was it? Man, I don't know. It was hot. It's probably July. And I'm like, yeah, it's January. They're not in the same spots.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to kind of know.
The seasonal
changes a lot of stuff.
Right.
And now, next July, go back to that area, and you're probably going to catch fish. Keeping a log, I used to. I don't know if you ever did, but I kept
don't.
one for 20 years.
I wish I
15
did.
years. And I used to write down every trip. I would I fished on a lake that fluctuated a lot. So that made a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
And I would write the water level, the temperature, how many fish we caught, and I would make some notes that I could remember. We caught them here, there. And over years, I could go back. April of last year, we caught them here. The lake was 4 foot higher. And what I learned, like on Lavon, this lake fluctuated. When the lake was low, go fish rocks. When the lake was high, the rocks didn't pan out because the fish would get up in the buckbrush. Well, I would know. I could tell you by the lake level where we're going to be whacking them in the spring just by the lake level. Well, a lot of people's like, man, we killed them at the dam last year, but they just never showed up here this year. And I'm like, I never went over one time. They're not going to because the lake's up. They ran up the creeks. It took me several years to break that pattern down just by going back in my logbook and start comparing stuff. And once I did that stuff, I kind of had my year mapped out, lake level. And it worked for summer, winter, everything. And it took a long time. Now, just like these guys now, Travis puts a lot more work into his craft than I'm doing right now on the tournament side. I'm busy. I'm not as mad at him. We're getting a little older.
Right.
We don't work quite as hard at it. And it shows in the tournament results a lot of times too. But back then, I did put that work in. And it took me years. But it was invaluable information that I had on a body of water that I was trying to make a living on, that I knew stuff that most people never even thought about. And like we've talked many times on this, attention to detail is one of the biggest differences in anglers, what they recognize. The guys that pick up on those little subtle things, or sometimes that's all it takes to separate you,
One of the things I really believe in, being a good crappie fisherman, no matter what you're doing, from tournaments to weekend or whatever, it's all really, in my mind, it's a process of elimination. And what I mean by that is, if you don't see stuff that you're looking for, whether it's structure, but number one, if you're using live scope, you're looking for fish. If you don't see them,
They ain't there.
they ain't there. There's no use fishing areas.
Yep.
So whenever I'm going to a new lake, and just like Travis said, he's going to go to the north end, possibly the deep end or the shallow end, but he's looking to eliminate one of them.
Correct.
Once you eliminate something, that gives you more to fine tune. All I'm doing whenever I'm going to any body of water is my starting mindset is, what do I need to eliminate? Am I eliminating the deep water? All right, then I might, like he said, he's going to eliminate the shallow water then. Well, then at that point, he knows he needs to focus on that mid-depth and then fine-tune it. All right, I know they're not anywhere from 6 foot to 1 foot, and I know they're not 30 to 40. I need to concentrate in that column. But so he's going to continue to keep narrowing it down. It's more than finding things. It's more about eliminating things.
Yep.
In my mind,
That's how I work.
Yeah,
I work by eliminating eliminating water.
You're wanting to put it out your head.
Yep.
And as the more stuff you take out of the equation, that finer pattern starts really developing.
Yep. Yeah. There's been a lot of times, if you only got a day or two to pre-fish for a tournament, you can't cover a whole lake. So, you're not going to check everything. But I remember a few tournaments where we're out there and Paul would be like, man, we didn't look shallow. Somebody's going to find them shallow. We're going to get beat shallow. And sure enough, everybody's out in 18, 20-foot water, and some guy runs, catches them in 8 foot. We didn't look there. And it's scary. And if you look there, you either eliminate it or they're there.
Yeah.
But if you don't get to do that.
If you don't eliminate it, you don't know.
The whole time you're like, man, and that's you learn from that stuff. You learn to you write those things down, man, and you remember. I remember fishing a lake this time of year. And that's one thing about Paulo Bear. If anybody knows him, I know a lot of people's heard of him and been around. This guy's like an elephant. Mm-hmm. He does not. He knows every fish he's ever caught on every lake and every tree.
I'm sure Paul really appreciates that.
Just kidding. I don't know if he's proud of it or not, but man, that guy, he does not forget. But when he was so dominant, there's a reason. He paid attention to every little detail, and most people didn't pick up on that. They were just like, man, I don't know how he does it. I'm like, I do. And I know how some of these guys now do what they're doing, And a weekend angler can learn so much from a tournament guy by some of the tricks we use. And I know a lot of people, and we talk about this, and you do on the podcast, that we're trying to reach everybody.
Yeah.
And the newcomers, and we're trying to teach them. And sometimes they get up there and go, man, these guys, all they do is talk about tournaments. And, yeah, we do talk about tournaments, but if you'll pay attention, it works for everything. Mm-hmm. It'll help you. Our experience and our time on the water and all that stuff, if you'll pick up from some of that stuff, it's really going to make you a better weekend angler. You have that mindset of moving, covering water, learning how to break a lake down like a pro breaks a lake down. And then all your buddies are going to look at you going, man, you started catching, you're catching a lot of fish, and that's how we got from weekend anglers to where we are, is learning to do some of this stuff that we talk about. So don't view it as, oh man, that's so far over my head, I'm not good, it doesn't pertain to me. No, it really does pertain to you.
All right. The next section, let's say you've got a good idea of that depth of water range that you want to key in on. You've eliminated things, and I'm going to probably use that word a lot because I think it's very important for somebody wanting to learn to break down lakes is elimination. You've eliminated, let's say, 8 foot of water and 12 foot of water, but you really want to key in that 8 to 12. That's the areas you want to key in, and you find them really on brush piles. What do you do at that next step to find more of that brush pile pattern to say?
So, for me, I'm kind of like what Jerry says, going to back to blackfish, but I hate fishing brush piles too. Mm-hmm. I'd rather fish timber any day or open water.
Yeah.
But for me at that point to find a brush pile, and I'm gonna open up my map. I'm gonna say, okay, where does this? Am I on a ridge? Am I on a flat? What am I on? And these fish are on this brush pile, and I'm probably gonna start side scanning. At that point in time, I'm gonna start side scanning, looking for, and something like that in Lake Fork is pretty hard to find because we have so much timber. But if it's an open water lake, and that has a brush pile, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna utilize my side scan. I'm gonna start marking them. I'm probably gonna go mark as many of them as I can, and then I'm gonna come back and fish them.
I'm going to go back further. I remember before live scan, we'd go to these lakes, and it would be a common denominator to everywhere you go. You'd think about, you could drive down a bank, you're looking up on the bank and you see a tree cut down. You drive, there's another tree. There's some brush piles somewhere. Close. You find a south wind protected bank, and once we figured out that, hey man, we catch fish between 15 and 18 foot water on brush piles. Yeah. Now we got to find more of those. So back then we had 2D. So
Yeah.
you had to drive right over something, and you'd have a buoy in your hand. You're driving,
Bloop.
and you're getting an 18, and you'd pitch it out. And no GPS. I mean, no spot lock. It was way back then, and come around and you'd fish.
You know, guys still fish without all this electronics.
Honestly, I guided that way for years, and I could still do it.
Yeah. There's still
we
people
learned
that
how
catch
to
fish.
line brush piles up and
Yeah.
triangulate and do all that stuff. And you'd say, "Hey, man, there's a couple old men. Look at that dock up there's got a fish basket. I know he crappie fishes. There's brush piles somewhere in this cove if you just find it. And you drive around and spend lots of idling time. There's nothing more boring for the co-angler or the other guy when one guy's staring at a graph and the other guy's riding around fires, and he's just sitting there looking around, and say, "Well, there's something." Now with side scan, you can make one pass and mark everything in there one pass. And but it's invaluable. All our boats. Well, I don't have as much as I used to, but my boat probably had 10 times the idling hours than it did running hours.
Right.
Just from idling, looking for structure.
Yeah.
And we don't do it as much as we used to anymore. But I can take you to your home lake, no matter where it is, and I can probably look on a map and drive around and probably tell you where there's going to be some brush piles. Just way it's protected from the wind,
Well, I look at if you find a brush pile, typically in a new body of water, that guy that's put out that brush pile, and nothing against, we thank you guys that put all the brush piles out, all those crappie fishermen do. But if you go to a new lake and you find a brush pile, you can just about look at it and see what that person was thinking.
Yep.
You can say, all right, this guy had this on a creek feeding into the main river channel going to the lake on a point. Mm-hmm. So that tells me, and I can tell this is a man-made brush pile, I need to look for that exact same thing all over the lake.
There's a point.
Because if he's put out one brush pile or that person's put out one, more than likely he's put out a lot more. Yep. You can almost pattern how people put out structure in a lake. A lot of times I'll look at a map and say, if I fish this lake, and I take it back further than that, I went to Grand Lake in Oklahoma and fished with Dustin back in August. And first afternoon I went out by myself in my boat. First thing I did is look at my map, and I said, where would I put out brush piles on this lake? That's how I first started out that lake. I looked at it and I said, where would I put brush piles at? And I picked 3 or 4 spots, and every one of them had brush piles on them. Everybody, we all think it's the same thing as far as even that brush pile aspect. I looked at them and I said, if I fish this lake all the time and I went to put out brush, where would I put them out at? And boom, went there, brush piles.
Yep.
Went to the next one, boom, brush piles. I'm like, oh my, this is nice. These guys think just like I would have put down brush. That's probably the quickest way for me to find brush piles on a new lake.
Yeah.
Is pull up a map and say, where would I put brush?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And they're usually there.
Yep.
It sounds simple, and it is simple.
Yeah, technology has changed us, but hasn't changed the fish. Really.
Or the fishermen, really, because we're going to think the same.
We're going to still think the same, and I don't know. I kind of miss it sometimes of having to do it the old way we used to do it, because we knew how to do it, and we spent so much time perfecting that now we don't have to use it no more. It's almost like useless information sometimes.
Well,
but it's not, though, because there's times when I really think it helps having that history and that knowledge, but it's also you can't rely on it too much. You still have to stay open-minded. We're talking the other day, Dustin brought this up 2 or 3 times in a seminar me and Todd and Kel and him was doing. Dustin brought up staying open-minded.
I wonder where he got that from.
Well, it could have got from you. I know. I hear you talk about it. But, for me, it kind of, when he said that, I kind of thought, I'm very guilty of getting stuck in my ways.
Yeah.
And
we all are.
We joke about it sometimes, like, I'm not buying minnows. And Kel's like, once you get some minnows, you'd be done an hour earlier. I'm not buying minnows. I'm not buying minnows. I'm just using jigs,
Yeah.
And he's like, man, I don't care what I have to do. I'm going to get done as quick as possible. And I sat there and go, we're OGs in the sense like we was talking about, kind of stuck in stubborn old ways. Now as we get older, I find myself even more stubborn and less wanting change in my life. I hate change, and
I've actually heard your wife tell me in the conversation before.
Oh yeah.
I'm just
But,
joking.
you know, think of that though. I enjoy being around like Travis and Kel and these guys, and this new fresh attitude that we're hearing and seeing from so many of these younger anglers. New anglers, they're not always have to be young. It does make us come out of our old shell sometimes and think different. You know, I pick up from these guys. They might think that. I hope I've been able to teach these guys some stuff over the conversations and help them out. You know, I really want to, but they help us out at times too.
Oh yeah.
Because I pick up from everybody, and that's what's so great. Like Grizzly Tackle Show.
Man,
you walk around here. You can't, you know, it would fill a book 10 times with just in 1 hour of the crappie knowledge that's around the show.
This is your first time, correct?
It is. Yeah, it's
What was your first impression?
Man, you know, I've never been to a show that was just pretty much all crappie like this. And I even told Jerry that this morning. We were walking around, and I said, if you want to come look at crappie fishing baits, they got it all. They got it all here. I mean, it's, you know, if you needed to come put it in one store, it's here.
Yeah, this is the store.
And so it's been obviously pretty neat. I've seen some baits I'd never heard of. I've picked up a few baits. You know, I've met people, and I believe it's a great show, and they have a phenomenal turnout.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You know, I think with the aid of live sonar, it's made that elimination so much quicker, but because you actually see, you know, and you have that confidence of fishing actually where you're seeing fish, and you know, you guys, all of us that's being able to utilize this technique, it does speed up this whole process that we've talked about, but it worked before live sonar. And you know what? It's going to continue to work. Yep. There's plenty of guys that we've both seen them on the lakes in this building. You don't have to have live sonar to go out in these new lakes and catch crappie. If you use some of these techniques that we've talked about even this morning, you can go to just about any lake in this country with minimum electronics. The more electronics, I mean, let's just face it, it speeds up this elimination process faster. You can look up underneath the piers and actually see what's on there.
Don't even have to shoot one.
Don't even have to pull up a rod. Where years ago, we had to actually fish all those piers.
A lot of time.
You might have to fish 40 to pick out 2.
And, you know, we didn't know. We'd shoot docks, say if you're shooting on a dock and didn't get a bite after 4 or 5 shots in there, you said, there's no fish in there. Yeah. Now we realize there might be 500 in there. He's not firing right now.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, I remember when Live Scope come out, first time Paulo Bear saw it, I took him to Fork, and I've been using it a while. And he gets up there, and I put it in the water. I said, look, Paul, there's a crappie right there on that tree. I drop down and catch it. He got real quiet. And he goes, I don't like it.
I don't like it.
I don't like it. I said, why? He goes, I don't like it. He goes, there's 2 things it's going to do. Everybody can do what I've been doing for years now. Second, it's going to slow me down. I said, why is it going to slow you down?
He's right.
He said, because I'm going to see a big fish, and I'm not going to want to leave it. And I said, you'll learn to leave it.
I'm guilty of that.
You're going to find out how many don't bite. And man, I could see his brain spinning, and he knew right then that his way of doing things was over like that. What it took him years to learn to catch fish on timber better than anybody I knew is gone. And I think it was heartbreaking, you know, and he probably got a sick feeling in his stomach, you know, he just said, I don't like it. And, you know, and I was like.
How does he feel now?
He's got it. I think he enjoys it now, because here's one thing about it. Now he doesn't fish like he used to.
Yeah.
So he can pull up out to Fork, make a run over there and drop his boat, and he can find some fish. He knows the right stuff to go look at, but he can also see them fish aren't there or they're not biting. Yeah. And now he's learned a lot too.
It's sped up that elimination process.
It did. It sped up. You know, what used to take, I don't know if we can put an exact time, but let's say 10 years to get in your tournament angling world, maybe it take a guy 10 years to get up to where he can really compete at the top. Guys can do it in a year. Or
Do it
less.
in a day.
Yeah, and for some of us, we're like, I used to say, man, they didn't earn it. They didn't earn it. And you hear that fight, wow, they didn't earn it. But then you think, you know what? It's not. We were lucky enough. We were born in the era where we had air conditioner. Our parents didn't.
I didn't have a remote. I was my daddy's remote.
Yeah, we didn't have remotes on our TVs and stuff. We didn't have, so all our phones had a cord on them. That's not their fault that they were born. My kids' fault that they were born when iPhones were out. The first phone they knew was an iPhone. It's not. That's what they know.
Yeah.
It's just.
I think it's cool. I mean, it's cool to have all these generations involved still with crappie fishing, and my mindset is there's still all kind of ways to catch them, and what I want to really express about this episode too is eliminating water, and also electronics. The main part of electronics in your boat and live sonar is it just helps you eliminate water faster.
It's just a tool.
Sure.
You still can find them with your brain. Mm-hmm. That's the main thing that catches crappie is figuring out what makes sense and putting together a game plan and eliminating what doesn't work fast. And that's what these tools do.
I want to touch on something that it's kind of been on my mind that I utilized at Eufaula this past fall.
Okay.
And what I did, it's obviously it's a 100,000 acre lake. Mm-hmm. It's overwhelming that you've never been to.
Yep.
I did enough research on the lake from the previous tournaments to know, okay, well, big fish were caught here, they were caught here. It's been won in this general vicinity. I'm going to eliminate maybe the south end because it hasn't been won down there in a while. And I went to this one section, and it was a kind of a row of timber. Mm-hmm. And I pulled in there, and I'd done enough research that I felt like, a 160, 170 type fish was a tournament fish. And I pulled in there and caught about 12 pounds. And I didn't know it at the time, but something that I always do pre-fishing is when I set, not necessarily find a brush pile, not find a tree or anything like that, but when I catch a big fish, I'm going to set a waypoint. I'm not even going to look at, at the time, I'm paying attention to what I'm doing. I'm in 20 feet of water because I was running a ledge. And they weren't shallow, they weren't deep. They were kind of, from what I remember, 22, 23 feet of water. I set a waypoint. And I fished down this whole entire bank, and I caught a big fish. I set a waypoint. And I had about 10 waypoints running down this deal. Didn't even look at them till that night. But I'm going, okay, well, I caught these fish in 20 to 23 feet of water on timber. Well, then I looked, that night I got on my graph, and I looked at it. And just unbeknownst to me at the time, every single fish I had caught on that bank come out of a ditch. I didn't even know it at the time until I looked at it. And there was a ditch coming out of every one of them. In those ditches was all my waypoints down a mile stretch of timber. And I'm going, okay, I just caught every one of these in a ditch. Every big fish I caught was in a ditch. So now I start looking at the lake and going, okay, well, that's set up just like this does. And that's what led me up on the northern part of the lake. I literally ran up to one of the most northern ditches I could find, well, south of 40 at the time, threw my trolling motor in the water, and there's roaming fish everywhere. But had I not set those waypoints, I probably never would have put that together.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So for me, I try to utilize that, and I go back and look at it and study it and say, what happened here? Why did I catch those fish there? And for those, it was amazing. I wish I had it here to show you, but
I can see it in my head.
Every single ditch coming out of that shoreline had a dot or a dot and a dot, and and it was just and I said, okay, well, hold on. If they're in these ditches, well, maybe they're in these ditches, and that pattern just led me to I eliminated. I guess it's kind of why I eliminated other areas. Now I started focusing on that, and I took that and it tried to expand that into, okay, well, I caught 160 class fish here. Let's move up this part of the lake, and then they might become 180 class fish, and then you're just gonna continue to grow on that. And that's kind of how I work.
Well, guys, I have really enjoyed it, and I think what we've all talked about this morning is very much keys to success in catching crappie on a new body of water. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, follow, turn your notifications on. We've have some great podcasts coming from Grizzly Jig Show. It's been an awesome time. Join me on Tuesday nights, live streaming on Facebook. I got Dust Ash McDaniel with me every Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Central Time. Till next time, you got Brad Chappell here.
Jerry Hancock.
Travis Decker.
Holla.
About a mile from Big Muddy River, a place I'll always remember. Cabin on the lake and a fishing pole. Forever here I'll rest my soul. I can feel my worries drift away.